There's something about finding two open bottles of wine in the sink at 7:13 a.m. on a Thursday that rewires a man's brain. Not one, two. And both were red, which was odd, because she never touched red, said it gave her headaches, and besides, who drinks red at night unless it's with steak? That was my first laugh that morning, a dry little chuckle from deep in my chest that even surprised me, because all I could think was, well, I guess someone brought the damn steak. It had been a normal week until that moment. Work, kids, dishes, arguments over who forgot to move the laundry, the usual cycle of middle-class routine decay. She'd left the house Wednesday afternoon to crash at her friend Lisa's place for a girls' wine night, and I didn't question it. I even texted her a meme about not getting too drunk and accidentally joining a cult, and she replied with a laughing emoji and a heart, which at the time felt genuine. But standing there, staring at those two wine bottles, one a 2017 Merlot, the other a 2018 Pinot Noir, I felt something click into place. There were two lipstick smudges on the rim of one of them, just slightly overlapping. That's not a fingerprint kind of mistake. That's the kind of mistake that happens when you start to believe you're untouchable. The wine corks had been shoved back in like someone was in a rush, and I don't even know why I noticed that. Maybe because the rest of the house was immaculate, spotless countertops, Febreze lingering in the air. Even the goddamn couch pillows were perfectly fluffed, which she only did when someone came over. She didn't know I'd be back that morning. I had a dental appointment she forgot about. Left work early, mouth still half numb. Came home to change shirts because I spilled coffee down the front. And that's when I found the wine. I stood there, running the rim of the bottle with my thumb, letting my mind rewind and replay the past few weeks like surveillance footage in a closed-loop feed. That was the first moment I saw it not as a marriage, but as a scene. A staged set. Every hug, every kiss, every "how was your day?" suddenly lit up like a prop under a forensic light. But I didn't rage. That would have been messy. And I don't do messy. I do precision. What I did next was put both bottles in the trash carefully, silently, then took out the trash myself, because God forbid she see the evidence and come up with a cleaner lie. I folded a new shirt over my arm, pretended to just be getting in, and greeted the kids like it was any other Thursday. I made their lunches. I kissed my daughter on the forehead and told her I'd pick her up from Emma's house early on Friday, because we had a surprise planned for her birthday. She beamed. My wife walked into the kitchen with that lazy, post-sleep smile, wearing leggings and a hoodie she didn't wear to bed. Her hair was washed. Her phone wasn't in her hand. That alone should have screamed something. She's addicted to that thing, like it's a third lung. But that morning, she set it face down on the counter and gave me a kiss on the cheek that was just hollow. If love is a sound, hers had gone mute. She asked how my appointment went. I told her the numbness was still lingering, so I'd be working from home. She froze, just for a breath, then covered it with a smile and said, "Great. We can do lunch." But she was already texting before I'd finished pouring the orange juice. I caught the angle of the screen. It wasn't Lisa. I knew it before I saw it. She tilted it away, as naturally as you'd block a stranger's glance on a subway. But I caught the preview, 3 heart emojis and "last night was," before it vanished. She looked up. I smiled. She smiled. We both lied with our teeth. I told her I'd be picking up our daughter from Emma's early on Friday. She said she forgot, said she had a thing with Lisa again. I said, "No problem, I'll take care of it." She said, "You're the best," and kissed my cheek again. I tasted something sour. That evening, I checked her calendar. There was nothing marked for Friday. Lisa's name hadn't appeared once in weeks. Her call logs confirmed that. So I messaged Lisa, casually. "Hope you two had fun last night." She replied 2 minutes later. "What? I haven't seen her in weeks. Everything okay?" I told her yes. Everything was perfectly okay. Friday morning, I reminded my wife again, just so she'd lock in the lie. She said she'd be out of town for the day, yoga retreat and spa. Maybe even stay the night. Don't wait up. I told her to have fun. She left looking radiant. Hair done, new earrings, perfume I'd never smelled before. She even said, "I love you," before closing the door. I said it back. Later that night, I drove our daughter to Emma's, picked her up like I said I would, and took her out for ice cream. I kept things casual. Just laughs, sprinkles, a happy early birthday balloon tied to the headrest. And then I suggested we stop by Mom's spa to surprise her. "Won't she love that?" I said. She nodded, smiling, holding her balloon like a prize. And I drove her toward the hotel I'd quietly confirmed with a Google search and a fake reservation. I parked across the street, and let the moment bloom. Because there's something unforgettable about the way a daughter looks when she sees her mother wrapped in a towel, running down a hallway, chasing after a half-dressed man who just shouted, "Jesus, you said your husband was out of town." There's something clean about that kind of silence. When she turns to me, and I say nothing, just open the car door and say, "Come on, kiddo. Let's go home." It wasn't like she stopped loving me all at once. It was quieter than that. More like a faucet left slightly open, dripping out warmth in slow, undetectable leaks until the sink ran dry. At first, it felt like a phase. I chalked it up to stress, hormones, maybe the monotony of parenting two kids and balancing her job with the PTA meetings. She started reading self-help books, titles like Radical Honesty and Boundaries Are Love, and highlighting entire chapters. At night, instead of curling up beside me, she'd sit at the edge of the bed with her laptop, whispering with her screen half-turned, fingers moving fast over the keyboard like she was chasing something urgent. I'd ask her what she was working on. "Just journaling," she'd say, or "trying to build a new routine." At first I admired it. She started waking up early, doing yoga, smoothies, cold showers. She bought expensive supplements and started calling processed food toxic. I smiled and played along, made jokes about becoming a kombucha couple, but she didn't laugh. Not really. Her eyes would twitch slightly at the corner, but the warmth wasn't there. She started using new words, clinical words, words like emotional bandwidth and energy exchange and alignment. And somewhere along the way, I realized those words were tools. Tools to build a wall I wasn't allowed to climb. She said she needed more space, but it wasn't the kind you measure in square feet. It was an emotional vacuum. I started noticing how often she left the house without saying where she was going. Before, she'd always send a quick text. Now it was hours later, sometimes right before dinner, sometimes long after. Went for a drive, just needed air. I asked her once if she was okay, if something was wrong, and she smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes, and said, "Not everything's about you, babe." That one stuck. She'd never called me babe before. I started checking the credit card statements, not because I didn't trust her, but because the Target runs turned into boutique charges and weekend spa visits. There was a charge from a hotel across town labeled room service. I asked her, casually, what that was about, and she said she and Lisa had gone there for a mini retreat one Saturday. Just a girls' detox day. "You wouldn't understand," she added, almost sweetly. I believed her. I wanted to. I even sent flowers to her office the next week, trying to show her I supported her growth, whatever that meant now. She didn't mention the flowers when she got home. Just kissed me on the cheek and went straight to the shower. One night I got home early and found her in the garage, sitting in her car. Not crying. Not talking. Just sitting. The engine was off. No music. Lights dimmed. I knocked on the window, and she flinched like she'd been caught stealing. "What are you doing?" I asked. She smiled, that same empty smile, and said, "Thinking." "Is that allowed?" Another time, I asked to borrow her laptop to check something for our taxes. She hesitated. That was new. She said it was dead, but I'd just seen her close it. When I reached for it, she grabbed it too quickly and said, "I'm working on something personal." Then she walked upstairs, like that ended the conversation. I sat there, hands still midair, feeling like a stranger in my own house. Her phone was always on Do Not Disturb now. It used to buzz constantly, texts from her sisters, her coworkers, Lisa. Now it stayed face down, silent, guarded. She took it into the bathroom, into the closet, into the laundry room. I found a receipt in her coat pocket once. 2 cocktails and an appetizer at a downtown bar. Not a girls' bar. I looked up the place. It was a couple's spot, dim lighting, jazz on Fridays. I asked her if she'd been, and she said, "Oh yeah, with some of the girls after work." Lisa was there. You know her. But she didn't look at me when she said it. Her tone had changed. She didn't argue anymore. She deflected, then disappeared. When we made love, it felt like scheduling an appointment. She'd initiate it suddenly, almost aggressively, but afterward she'd roll away like we'd just completed a transaction. There was no cuddling, no conversation, just silence, and that same damn phrase, "I just need to be alone with my thoughts tonight." I started walking around the house at night, noticing how her scent lingered in the guest bathroom, how one of the candles in the living room was always freshly burnt even though she claimed to be asleep by 10. I checked her social media out of curiosity one day, only to realize I'd been removed from seeing her stories. "Must be a glitch," she said when I brought it up, but she didn't fix it. I knew, deep down, something was bleeding out between us, something sacred. But I didn't push. I kept being the supportive husband. I took the kids to soccer. I folded the towels. I made her coffee exactly the way she liked it. Almond milk, 1 sugar, cinnamon on top, even though she'd stopped drinking it. "It's too acidic for me now," she said. "I'm evolving." And in her evolution, she left no space for the man who had once watched her give birth. The man who once held her hand through her father's funeral. I still believed, maybe out of cowardice or loyalty or just the slow hypnosis of routine, that we were okay. That this was a phase. But the truth was already in motion. It had already changed form. The woman who stood beside me now wore the same face, the same ring, the same perfume. But inside, the stranger had already moved in. It was the shoes that did it. Of all things, a pair of men's running shoes I'd never seen before, tucked neatly in the corner of our mudroom beside her worn-down Converse. Size 11. Clean. New. Too new. I noticed them on a Wednesday morning, right after dropping the kids off. She had left before me that day, said she was heading to her therapy appointment, a new one she'd started with someone who understood her spiritual evolution better. She was big on therapy lately, always talking about boundaries and inner child work and how our marriage had become a pattern of codependence. I had nodded through all of it, listened without protest, took the guilt like aspirin and swallowed it dry. But those shoes didn't belong to any therapist. Therapists don't leave their sneakers by the door of the house they're supposed to help save. I stared at them for a long time, longer than I probably should have, just staring like they were radioactive. White soles, no scuff marks, no dirt, not a trace of real use. Bought for comfort, not for running. That was the moment everything in me shut off. It wasn't shock. I'd already mourned the suspicion in silent pieces. It wasn't even anger. Anger is a fire, and fire makes noise. This was cold, pure frost. I crouched, ran my finger along the rubber edge, and pulled the tongue forward just enough to see the label. Size 11, Nike React, retail price $180. I checked the hallway camera footage on my phone. Motion was detected at 8:17 p.m. the night before. I watched it, calmly, as a tall man I didn't recognize walked in behind her, wearing a hoodie and carrying a gym bag. She kissed him before they entered the hallway. She didn't close the door fast. She let it linger, like she wanted the house to breathe him in. They moved toward the stairs, and the footage cut. I stared at my reflection in the black screen and didn't move. My own breath felt borrowed. The shoes were proof. Not of infidelity. I already knew that part. They were proof of ownership. He had been here. In my house. My space. My children's home. He was comfortable enough to take off his shoes, and she was comfortable enough to let him. That wasn't a fling. That was intimacy. That was familiarity. That was my life being replaced in real time, one pair of shoes at a time. I stood up slowly, methodically, and walked to the kitchen. Made a pot of coffee. Sat at the table. Let it brew like a funeral. I could hear the drip-drip of the machine, the same one I'd bought her last Christmas when she said she missed the fancy cafe feel. I had spent days researching the right one. She had said it made her mornings feel special. Now it felt like a punchline. When the coffee was done, I poured 1 cup and left the second mug on the counter. Hers. I used the same cinnamon she always used, placed it right where she usually found it. Then I took out my phone, opened the calendar app, and began to plot. Not a breakdown. Not a confrontation. A strategy. A timeline. I already knew the kids would be with me this weekend. I had arranged it 2 weeks ago under the excuse of bonding time. She had been thrilled. Said she needed a weekend to reconnect with herself. I nodded then. I smiled. And now I knew what she really meant. She wanted to play house with someone else in my absence. Perfect. That made my next steps cleaner. I took photos of the shoes. Not to confront her, but to remember the exact moment the spell broke. The exact weight of silence that fell over me like snowfall on a battlefield. I didn't speak when she came home later that evening, hair wet from the shower, smelling like eucalyptus and someone else's cologne. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how my day was. I said fine. My voice didn't even tremble. She didn't notice. She never looked up from her phone. She poured herself a glass of wine and curled up on the couch like she hadn't just hollowed out our life and invited a ghost to live in it. I sat beside her, sipping my coffee, staring at the TV. The kids were playing in their rooms. The house was warm, quiet, still, and I had never felt so clear. My wife was gone. The woman in front of me was someone else, a liar with a yoga mat and a full schedule. And I was done being the background character in her new beginning. I was about to become her ending. I didn't confront her after the shoes. That would have been amateur. Emotionally satisfying for 5 minutes, maybe, but useless in the long run. No, I needed to know the scale. Was this a brief betrayal or a double life? So I watched. Silently. I made myself invisible inside my own home. I started small, harmless things, mental notes, adjusted routines, tiny data points. I moved a photo on her nightstand 1 inch to the left before I left for work. When I returned, it had been moved again, not back to its original place, but elsewhere. That confirmed he was coming over during the day. So I began rotating objects, lipsticks, shoes, hairbrushes. Subtle. Nothing she'd notice, but enough to see the evidence in absence. Then I bought a second phone. Prepaid, untraceable. Installed a fake Instagram account with a generic fitness influencer profile, just enough cleavage, enough hashtags to bait her curiosity. I followed her, watched her go private, then eventually accept the request. That told me everything about where her mind was. She was still seeking attention, still addicted to validation. I waited, and sure enough, within 2 days, she posted a story, a glass of wine, dim light, a hint of thigh, captioned healing vibes. Not a word about her kids, not a glimpse of her actual life. Just curated lies. She posted it while she told me she was at a work meeting. So I sent flowers to her office that same day. From your loving husband. Hope the meeting isn't too boring. She didn't mention the flowers when she got home. I asked about the meeting. She paused, blinked twice, then said, "It got canceled last minute. I just grabbed coffee with Lisa instead." That was her third lie of the week. I added it to the list. Lisa had been quiet lately, too quiet. So I created another fake profile. This one was for Lisa. Just a shell. Just a shadow. I used an old image from her own Facebook, changed the name slightly, and followed my wife's account. She blocked it within hours. A normal woman wouldn't do that. A guilty one would. Meanwhile, I tracked our joint accounts, nothing obvious at first, but then I noticed recurring charges to the same small wellness cafe downtown. Same time, same day, every other Friday. Always under $50. Just low enough to go unnoticed. I drove there once, sat 2 blocks away. Watched her walk out at 12:57 p.m. with the same man from the hallway camera. Tall, smug, wearing a backpack like he belonged. She laughed too loud. Her body leaned into him in a way that wasn't just romantic, it was familiar. Practiced. She wore the same earrings I gave her last Valentine's Day, the same ones she said were too flashy for daily wear. I took pictures, not to confront her, just to build the archive. I started recording my conversations with her. Voice memos, disguised as to-do lists. I asked strategic questions. Do you want me to get your car serviced this weekend? She said no, she was using Lisa's. Do you want me to pick up the dry cleaning Saturday? She said not to worry, she wouldn't be home. Each lie stacked like bricks. I set calendar reminders to follow her patterns. I learned that she always disappeared between 10:30 and 1:30 on Wednesdays, claimed it was yoga, but her gym app showed no check-ins. I joined the same gym anonymously. Different location. Asked around. No one knew her. I called the yoga studio she swore by. They hadn't seen her in weeks. Still, I said nothing. I became an expert in her rituals. How she made the bed with hospital corners only when she had guests. How she lit candles in the living room only when expecting someone. How she used her good perfume sparingly, only when she left wearing heels and came back barefoot. I followed her friend once, not her friend. Lisa. She went to Target, then to a day spa. No hotel. No wine. No lies. She wasn't in on it. So that killed the alibi. I stopped tracking Lisa. Started tracking the man. I found his name in our guest Wi-Fi history. He logged in once, 2 weeks ago. Didn't mask his device. Real amateur. I traced his IP to a name, then to a social media page. He was married. Married with a toddler. I smiled when I saw that. Took screenshots. Watched his wife's profile too. She hadn't posted in months. Looked tired in the last photo. Like she knew something but couldn't name it. I started to think maybe I wasn't the only ghost in someone else's story. I downloaded everything: bank statements, call logs, location data. I organized it into folders, dated, labeled, tagged. Not to use yet. Just to hold. Just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That this wasn't paranoia. This was real. This was tactical. And she never suspected a thing. She kissed me every night like I was still stupid. Like I still believed in her midnight meditations and weekend soul journeys. But she didn't know she'd already been caught. She didn't know that while she rehearsed her lies in bathroom mirrors, I was already documenting the monologue. She didn't know I'd become a shadow, always a few feet behind, watching her stitch together her fantasy while I quietly unraveled it thread by thread. And when the time came to burn the stage, I would do it with precision. No explosions. No drama. Just a slow, surgical collapse. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's silence sharpened into a scalpel. It was her idea to host the dinner party, 8 close friends, 2 couples from the neighborhood, one of my coworkers, and Lisa, of course, her ever-loyal alibi. She planned every detail with obsessive flair, the wine pairings, the seating chart, the soft jazz playlist on loop. She even ordered name cards and handwritten thank you notes in advance. I smiled and helped, played the doting husband to perfection, kissed her forehead while she arranged the tulips just right. She looked radiant that night, new dress, hair curled, that gold necklace I bought her 2 anniversaries ago. She wore it like a shield. What she didn't know was that every plate at the table, every glass of wine, every bite of pan-seared salmon had been leading to one specific moment. When dessert was served, and the room buzzed with wine-softened laughter, I stood to make a toast. She smiled at me, eyes shining, hand resting gently on my wrist as if she owned me. To my beautiful wife, I began, for organizing such a lovely evening. And for teaching me that sometimes, the person you love most becomes a stranger you don't recognize. The room quieted. A few awkward laughs. Lisa's smile flickered. My wife's hand tensed. It's funny, I continued, holding my wine glass with perfect stillness, how you can live with someone for over a decade and not see the full picture. Until one day, you just do. I nodded toward the TV mounted above our fireplace. Everyone turned as the screen lit up. It played on mute, security cam footage from our hallway, taken 3 weeks ago. Her, laughing, hair tousled, unlocking the door with a man behind her. Him placing his hand on her waist. Her kissing him, pulling him in by the shirt. Silence. Just silence and the soft click of the fork falling from Lisa's hand. My wife froze. Everyone turned to her. I didn't move. Didn't blink. She stammered. It's not what it looks like. I tilted my head, waiting. We were just talking. That's a friend. A coworker. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was scanning the room, watching the walls close in. It was just a mistake. Okay? One mistake. It didn't mean anything. Then she stood, voice shaking. You've been distant for years, and she pointed at me now, desperation creeping in. I needed someone who actually saw me. Lisa stood slowly, jaw slack, unsure if she should stay or run. My coworker cleared his throat. His wife covered her mouth. You never made me feel alive, she snapped. You treated me like furniture, like I was just there. I smiled. Just slightly. And yet, I said quietly, you invited your replacement into our home. Into our bed. While our daughter was down the hall watching Frozen. She flinched like I'd struck her. How long? I asked. How long have you been lying to your children? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I turned to the others. Would anyone like coffee? Or should I continue? The room stayed frozen. She sat slowly, shaking now, voice brittle. You planned this whole night? Just to humiliate me. Her tone tried to summon outrage, but it faltered. I leaned down, hands on the table, eyes locked with hers. No. I planned this night so you could see, for once, what truth looks like in a room full of people who believed your performance. She laughed thin, a hollow, bitter sound. You're pathetic. You think this makes you strong? Her eyes gleamed with the false confidence of someone clinging to a sinking ship. You'll miss me when I'm gone. Gone. I whispered. You're already gone. I just gave you the stage to announce it. Her face changed then. The color drained. The laugh died. She looked at the door, as if she might run. But she didn't. She stayed. Because there were too many witnesses. Because running would confirm everything. Because deep down, she thought there was still a card to play. This was private, she hissed under her breath, teeth barely moving. You made it public. You think they'll side with you? I stood straight again, smoothing my sleeve. They don't have to. I'm not looking for sides. I'm just cleaning house. No one moved. The air was thick, choking, vibrating with held breath. Lisa sat down. My coworker whispered something to his wife. The man from next door took a long sip of wine and stared hard at his plate. And she She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Because in that moment, she hadn't. The man she lied to, manipulated, gaslit into silence. That man was dead. What stood before her now was something she hadn't accounted for. A man with nothing left to lose. A man who had already begun to build a life without her. And I hadn't even told her about the kids yet. I hadn't told her what they saw. That was a gift for another day. She opened her mouth to speak again. I raised a hand, calmly. Don't. I didn't need to say another word. And so I didn't. I just stood there. Let her drown in it. The lies, the shame, the silence. Let the night stretch into something unbearable. I wasn't done yet. Not even close. She came into the bedroom like a storm that didn't know where to land, still wearing the dress from the dinner, heels kicked off at the door, hair wild from the night unraveling around her. But her eyes weren't sad, not yet. They were sharp, frantic, scrambling for leverage in a world where none existed anymore. You're proud of that little show, huh? She snapped, pacing the room like a caged animal, arms waving, voice shaking with rage dressed up as righteousness. You think that makes you a man? Ambushing me in front of everyone like that. I didn't answer. Just unbuttoned my shirt slowly, folded it over the chair, calm as still water. You humiliated me. You planned it. That's not strength, that's cruelty. I sat on the edge of the bed, watched her like I was studying weather patterns. Say something. She barked, hands clenched. I met her eyes, expression unreadable. I already did. That froze her for half a second, long enough for her to pivot. You smothered me, she hissed, walking toward the mirror but staring at me through the reflection. You sucked the life out of me. Every day, I was dying inside. Chores, schedules, boring conversations about insurance and school pickups. What did you expect me to do? I didn't blink. Not him. Her face contorted. You act like you're perfect. Like you did nothing wrong. You're just a robot who pays bills and folds towels like it's a personality trait. I tilted my head. And you're a coward who needed attention so badly you let a stranger inside our home. That one hit. She turned away like the words slapped her. He made me feel alive, she muttered, biting her lip, voice lower now. He actually listened to me. He made me laugh. When's the last time you made me laugh? When you told me you were working late. She spun back around. You're a piece of work, you know that? You think this is noble? You think being cold and calculated makes you better than me? You're just emotionally dead. You've always been emotionally dead. And you've always been emotionally dishonest, I replied. I just stopped pretending not to notice. She started crying then. Real tears, maybe, or at least they looked real. You don't get it, she sobbed. I tried to love you. I wanted to fix this. But you never let me in. I stayed quiet. Let the silence stretch. She collapsed onto the bed beside me, face buried in her hands, then looked up through smeared mascara. Please, just tell me what you want. Yell at me. Hit something. Feel something. I looked at her like I was observing a stranger in the aftermath of her own fire. I don't want anything from you, I said. Not your guilt. Not your tears. Not your story. Her jaw dropped slightly, like that admission cracked something she hadn't prepared for. She expected rage. A fight. She had scripted this part in her mind, yelling, crying, some sick twisted reconciliation. But there was no script for indifference. So that's it, she whispered, trembling now. You're just done. I nodded. I was done the moment I realized you'd let him wear my slippers. She gasped, confused. What? I smiled, slow, calm, almost amused. The hotel slippers. From our trip to Napa. I saw them in the trash. Size 11. You gave them to him. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. You gave him my memories, I said. That's all I needed to know. She shook her head violently. That's insane. That's nothing. You're clinging to details like some obsessed. Details are the difference between love and betrayal, I cut in. You forgot that. I never did. She stood up, pacing again, angrier now. You think you're better than me? Like you're this unbreakable man who's too calm to feel pain? You're not better. You're just broken differently. I nodded slowly. But at least I broke alone. You dragged us all into your collapse. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to hurt the kids. But you did. It wasn't supposed to go that far, but it did. She backed into the wall like the truth had hands. You can't just shut down like this, she snapped. You don't get to decide the ending by yourself. I stood then, walked past her toward the closet, opened it slowly, then turned to face her. You decided the ending when you chose to live two lives and hide both from your children. She stepped forward, voice rising, hands shaking. I made one mistake. No, I said sharply. You made 100. one lie at a time. She stopped speaking. Her mouth stayed open, but the words were gone. She knew it. And worse, she knew I knew it. That no amount of guilt-tripping, rage, or tears could claw back the power she'd lost. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge porn or broken dishes. I was the consequence. Calm, measured, untouchable. And that was what broke her. Not the exposure, not the judgment, but the fact that I was done, and she could no longer reach me. She thought silence meant mercy. That because I hadn't screamed, because I hadn't packed a bag and slammed the door, because I still made breakfast for the kids and folded her yoga pants like nothing had changed, that I was either broken or forgiving. What she didn't realize, what she never saw, was that I was already in motion, already laying the groundwork for her downfall before she could even spin her next lie. Revenge wasn't about rage. Rage is messy, short-lived, emotional. Revenge is structure, timing, design. It's war disguised as peace. The first thing I did was secure the hard evidence. I collected everything. Every camera clip, every photo, every bank transaction, every fake wellness appointment, every message and voicemail. I uploaded it to a private encrypted cloud folder, labeled with dates, times, names. I printed hard copies, 2 just in case. 2 binders, black leather. 1 for legal, 1 for personal leverage. Then I locked down the finances. Joint account access? Removed. Her credit card? Canceled. I left just enough in her account to keep her from noticing immediately, breadcrumbs to maintain the illusion of control. I visited the bank personally to reclaim my name as sole owner on the house, using documentation she'd signed years ago during a refinance she barely understood. I updated all passwords. Froze her access to our shared cloud, the car insurance, even the Netflix account. Petty? Maybe. But control is built in inches, not miles. I retitled the car she drove, my car, but with my bonus, to my name only, then removed her as a permitted driver on the insurance. She'd find out when her app stopped unlocking the doors. I changed the locks on our house quietly during a workday when she thought I was at the office. I kept the old keys in the bowl by the door so she wouldn't notice. Because I needed her calm. I needed her complacent. I filed for divorce that same week, clean, uncontested on the surface, but structured like a tactical strike. Full custody request, based on neglect and moral conduct, supported by surveillance, screenshots, and her own lies. I had dates. I had proof she brought another man into our home during the children's sleep schedule. Judges don't like that. The petition was filed with emergency provisions. She wouldn't see it coming until the sheriff handed her the envelope. I also filed to freeze our marital assets until proceedings were done. No withdrawals, no new debts, no creative financial games. Meanwhile, I made sure to get ahead of the story. I sent a single, calm message to her parents, 2 paragraphs, no insults. Just the truth, with attached images and a brief explanation. I told them I'd protect the kids and keep things civil, but I thought they deserved honesty. Her father replied. 1 line. I'm sorry, son. We raised her better than this. That was enough. I sent similar messages to a select few friends, not mutual friends, her friends. The ones she leaned on for sympathy. I stripped her of that weapon in one afternoon. I didn't blast her on social media. I didn't rant. I just told the truth. Succinct, undeniable truth, with timestamps and visuals. Let them draw their own conclusions. The silence I got in return was louder than any scream. Then I moved on to the professional angle. She had always bragged about her close relationship with her boss, about the casual drinks, the after-hours brainstorming sessions. So I crafted an email, not angry, not threatening, just concerned. I said I believed she might be bringing a personal relationship into professional settings that could create conflicts of interest. I attached 2 photos, one of her and the man, her co-worker, as it turned out, entering a hotel midday in business attire, and one of her leaving, hair tousled, shirt untucked. I didn't accuse. I simply asked, is this in line with company policy? Then I created a burner email account, CC'd HR, just for insurance. From there, I took care of the kids. I scheduled therapy for them under my name. Quiet, discreet, through the school district. I spoke to their teachers. Told them things at home might be shifting, to let me know if behavior changed. I didn't mention her name once, but I made it clear who was present and who wasn't. The final step was the illusion. I kept everything normal, eerily so. I kissed her on the cheek every morning, told her to have a good day, sent her memes and dinner ideas. She thought I was healing. She thought I was still holding on. She didn't know that every smile was a funeral. that every gesture was a countdown. When the papers hit her desk, when the sheriff knocked on her office door with a sealed envelope and a court date, it would be the first real moment she understood that I wasn't reacting. I was dismantling. And by then, it would be far too late. The war would already be over. It was her idea to attend the company's spring gala together, the first time in months she'd asked me to be part of her world again, and I said yes without hesitation, because by then everything was already in motion, already set in stone, already bleeding quietly under the surface of her carefully constructed lie. She wore her favorite navy blue dress, the one with the slit she swore made her feel powerful, and she smiled like nothing had changed, like she hadn't spent the last 6 months building an alternate life in shadows and whispers. We arrived right on time, hand in hand, and I could feel her grip tighten the second we walked through the doors. The room fell quiet in that unnatural way people pretend not to notice, eyes scanning, hushed murmurs floating just above the music. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, leaning in to whisper, "They're just surprised to see us together." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just walked with her, calm, steady, a man walking his ghost into a storm. Her boss was the first to approach, expression unreadable, hands clasped too formally for someone who used to call her family. She tried to laugh it off, tried to greet him the same way she always did. "You better have the bar open or I'm leaving." But her voice cracked mid-sentence, and the silence that followed cut sharper than any insult. He didn't laugh, just looked at me, then back at her, then excused himself without a word. That's when she knew. Her eyes darted across the room, former coworkers turning their backs mid-glance, the HR manager quietly sipping her drink from the far corner, Lisa standing near the buffet, lips pressed tight, arms folded, not looking her way. "Something's off," she muttered. "Did you say something to them?" I shook my head slowly, deliberately. "No." "You did." She stared at me for a moment, face pale beneath her makeup, blinking fast like she could reverse the footage if she just closed her eyes long enough. Then the messages started. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Then again. Her hand trembled slightly as she pulled it from her purse, eyes darting back and forth across the screen. I saw the moment she opened the first screenshot, her face blanked, lips parting, her thumb frozen in place. The photos were circulating now. Not from me. From the quiet mouths of people she underestimated. The hallway footage. The messages to her lover, the ones she thought were deleted, recovered and forwarded to her colleagues. The hotel timestamps matched against her sick day excuses. And then, as if summoned by fate, he walked in. The man. Her man. His wife behind him, arm tightly wrapped around his like a chain, eyes hollow and burning. He saw her. She saw him. And that's when the smile dropped from her face like glass shattering on tile. He didn't stop. He didn't speak. Just turned away, guiding his wife toward the other side of the room, choosing survival over scandal, self-preservation over delusion. She staggered. Literally staggered. Like the floor had shifted under her heels. She turned to me, wide-eyed now, mascara already smudging beneath her right eye. You set me up," she breathed. I just watched her. Calm. Detached. Like a man observing the final stage of a controlled demolition. "You destroyed everything," she hissed, voice rising now, attracting stares. "You ruined me." A few heads turned. I could see her mother now, standing by the entryway. Yes, I'd invited her, staring at her daughter with a look I'd only seen once before, at her father's funeral. A look of mourning. She started walking forward but stopped halfway, stared at her daughter like a stranger, then turned and walked back out without saying a word. That was the second collapse. Her knees buckled slightly. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough for everyone to see it. Enough for her to feel it. Her hand hung in the air for half a second before she pulled it back like she'd touched something scalding. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking, "we can fix this. I'll quit my job. I'll go to therapy again. I'll do whatever it takes." I didn't answer. Just stared. That's when the tears came. Real ones this time. Messy. No control. Her shoulders heaved. Her face crumpled. The kind of crying that doesn't beg for forgiveness. It begs for escape. But there was none. Not in that room. Not with the weight of her lies crashing down around her like fire in a glass house. She turned in circles, eyes searching for someone, anyone, who would meet her gaze. No one did. The room wasn't angry. It was worse. It was silent, judging. And when she finally looked back at me, chest rising and falling, face blotched, lips trembling, I didn't flinch. I didn't smirk. I didn't speak. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, watching. Because in that moment, she understood what justice looks like. Not rage, not violence, stillness. The unwavering presence of the one person who had every right to leave, and chose to stay long enough to let her see herself, unmasked, unwanted, and utterly alone. The second explosion didn't happen in private. It happened in the middle of her sister's engagement party, a beautiful garden setup with string lights, catered food, a rented violinist playing Vivaldi. Like this was some flawless fantasy of a family that still held together. I hadn't planned it that way, but sometimes the match doesn't need to be struck, just thrown into the right room. She saw me from across the courtyard, froze for a second, then forced that broken smile she used to wear when she still thought charm could hide rot. Her friends were nearby, her mother sipping wine and avoiding eye contact, and her sister laughing with the fiancé, blissfully unaware. I walked straight toward her, and the moment I arrived, her voice snapped, too high-pitched, too fake. You shouldn't be here. I looked at her calmly. It's family, isn't it? Her jaw tensed. This isn't about us. Don't make a scene. I raised an eyebrow. You mean like bringing another man into our home while the kids were asleep? That kind of scene. The words cut through the music like a glass shattering. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Her friend Jess took half a step back. Lower your voice, she hissed, cheeks flaring red, eyes darting. Or what? I asked louder now. You'll lie to them too? Like you lied to your own children? Told them mommy was working late while you were getting undressed in a hotel room with a man whose name they'll never hear, because even you know he doesn't give a damn about you. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. I stepped forward. You want a scene? Let's give them one. Tell them the truth. Tell your sister why I'm not in any of the family pictures anymore. Tell your mother why she hasn't seen the kids in 3 weeks. Or should I? Her mother stood up slowly, her wine glass still in hand, but forgotten. Her voice was low. Is it true? The question was a whisper, but in the silence that followed, it felt like a gunshot. My wife looked at her mom, then at the guests now circling in close, faces pale with curiosity, with second-hand dread. She stammered. It was complicated. He wasn't there for me. He didn't care. I laughed, not with humor, but with the disbelief of a man hearing the same script for the 1000th time. I didn't care. I turned to the crowd. She says I didn't care. I was the one up at 3 a.m. when our daughter had a fever. I was the one who paid off her student debt. The one who defended her to everyone when she blew through 3 jobs in 2 years because she wasn't being valued. I cared so much. I missed my own brother's funeral because she begged me not to leave during her mental reset weekend. Gasps now. Her father, who'd stayed back near the bar, took 2 steps forward, fists clenched but unmoving. She shook her head rapidly. He's twisting it. He's making me sound. Like what? I cut her off, voice sharp. Like someone who brought another man into our home? Who made our son think she was just friends with a guy he saw her hugging in the driveway. That was when her voice cracked. I made a mistake, okay? One mistake. I turned toward her affair partner, who I now saw standing awkwardly near the dessert table, face pale, wife nowhere in sight. You want to tell them, man? I called out. Want to tell her family how many times it happened? How many mistakes she invited you to make? He started walking backward, hands up, muttering something about not wanting trouble. She turned on him. Say something, she screamed. Don't you dare walk away now. But he did. Right past her sister's shocked fiancé, right past her mother, and out the gate without so much as an apology. The silence afterward was suffocating. Her sister was crying now, whispering, You told me it was over. You promised me it was over. Her mom finally spoke again, quieter this time. I can't believe you did this to them. To your children. That's when the meltdown came. She turned on everyone. On her mother, on her sister, on me. You all act so perfect, she shrieked, voice shrill and ugly. You think I'm the villain? He was a robot. A paycheck with a face. You think any woman would want that? She pointed at me, hands shaking. You bored me. You made me feel invisible. I didn't move. I just let her scream. Let her dig the hole herself, every word slamming her deeper. You think this is my fault? She wailed. If you'd been a real man, I wouldn't have needed someone else. A few people tried to step in, her friend Jess, her cousin, someone from her father's side, but I raised one hand. Not in anger, just finality. You know what the saddest part is? I said, voice low but clear. You still think this is about excitement, about validation. You never even realized what you destroyed. You never saw what it cost because you never built it. You just decorated it. She broke then. The tears weren't performative anymore. She collapsed into a chair, face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably while the people she once controlled now stared at her like a stranger. I turned to leave. I didn't run. I didn't gloat. I just walked, slow and steady, out of the chaos while the lights flickered behind me and the violinist stopped playing. I didn't need to look back to know she was watching. Because for the first time in her life, she had nothing left to say. She disappeared for a while after the blow-up at the party, just vanished from every group chat, deactivated her social accounts, even left town for a few weeks, probably hoping the heat would die down and people would forget. But people don't forget betrayal when it's broadcast in high definition with timestamped receipts. Word spread faster than she could run. Her job let her go quietly, citing internal concerns and a need for reputation management. But everyone knew why. Clients had complained, colleagues stopped talking to her, and HR wouldn't return her emails. The affair partner? Gone. Ghosted her the moment his own wife filed for separation and threatened to take the house. He never even answered her last message. She tried reaching out to her old circle, but the silence hit harder than any insult. Just blocked her. Lisa unfollowed. Even her yoga instructor asked her not to come back, saying the energy was off. Her parents stopped visiting. Her dad wouldn't speak to her at all. Her mother sent one final message: "You've brought shame to this family. Don't contact us until you've changed." Her sister never responded to any apology, never returned a call, not even a seen notification. She tried reaching the kids through the school at one point, but I'd already worked that out legally. Every move she made hit a wall. No voice. No presence. Just echoes of the woman she used to be. She moved to a different city, smaller, forgettable, took a job at a local call center under her maiden name. I didn't need to follow her. The silence was enough. The weight of everything she'd lost did the talking for me. Then, one rainy Tuesday, 6 months later, she showed up at my door. She looked thinner, older, like regret had aged her 5 years in half the time. No makeup, no forced smile, just red eyes and a soaked hoodie. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't pretend. She just stood there shaking. "I lost everything," she whispered. "You were the only person who ever loved me for who I was." I said nothing. Just stood in the doorway, letting the rain fill the silence. She took a breath like she was gathering courage for something impossible. "I know I don't deserve anything. I know that. But if there's any part of you left, even just a sliver, that remembers us, please, I'm begging you, tell me there's still a chance." Her voice cracked, and she broke down crying right there on the porch. The woman who once believed she was untouchable now couldn't even look me in the eye without falling apart. I waited until she was done sobbing. I didn't comfort her, didn't touch her. I just looked her dead in the face and said, "You're not the woman I married. You're just the consequence." And I closed the door. That was the last time I saw her. I haven't heard from her since. She lives somewhere far, somewhere forgettable, and that's fitting. Because the world has forgotten her, just like I have. The kids are doing better now. They ask less about her. They laugh more. I still keep the footage in a locked drive, not because I want to relive it, but to remind myself what betrayal really looks like: quiet, casual, and cold until it burns. And to anyone out there listening, just remember, silence isn't weakness. It's preparation. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just has to be final. Thanks for sticking with me through this. I know this one was heavy. Where are you listening from? And did you enjoy the story?